Hi, I'm Tyra G, your host of Frankly Speaking with Tyra G. Welcome again to our virtual global gathering of phenomenal women and all of you who love them. You mothers, daughters, grand and great-grandmothers, fearsome and generous, humble and honest in pursuit of new possibilities and purpose. We dig deep and we come up strong. For those of you joining us the first time, each month we explore a new theme inspired by you. Yes, I said you. Together we bravely walk into places where tradition has taught us there's some things that we don't even talk about, but not at this table. And no matter how hard judgment knocks, it will not get in. Beloved ladies, here we live beyond the wreckage. Every week we meet here for 1 hour to experience, educate, encourage, and empower each other. We share some aha moments and stories that have been left in our pockets for too long. Every week we start with where we are. Although many of our voices will speak light into darkness, there is no insignificant person at this table. Each show we have 3 segments: the beginning, the middle, and the end. The beginning is where I walk you in and set the table for our meal. The middle is our show's Sister Talk main course, where one of you phenomenal, generous, and fearless women join me in the interview seat. I named the last segment It's Not Over because this is where I fill a virtual doggy bag with thoughts of empowerment and encouragement for you to take with. You're listening to Radio Fairfax, Virginia on your TV, computer, or mobile device, and we are webcast worldwide on the internet at www.radiofairfax.org. every Saturday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Should you miss us, you can catch us on our podcast, www.franklyspeakingwithtyrag.com. And if you feel like you want to connect with me offline, it's easy. Email me at tyragarlington.com. Thank you so much for listening in. I am still praising the composer and performer of our theme song, Mr. Courtney Nero, my favorite saxophone player and my friend. Courtney thought it appropriate that a radio show called Frankly Speaking with Tyra G ought to have a special theme song named I'm Listening, and this is it. Makes me want to dance. Thanks, Courtney. In the last 2 months, we've been getting to know one another within our theme, This Is Us. We have shared successes and struggles. We've laughed and we've cried. We have dug deep and we have come up strong. This month we are focusing on our own sustainability, inside and out. This month we are exploring an exciting and timely topic selected by you. It crosses generations and cultures. The issues of women's health is dynamic and diverse and interdependent. We are discussing health through many lenses, including physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial. After our break, we're going to continue our journey. I want you to stay close now. I like to begin each show by creating a common thought space for us to inhabit while we're together. I also like to begin with that special, limitless, and pregnant question, what if? But first, a disclaimer. I have been passionate about women's health for the last 30 years, since my first close encounter with impermanence, also known as death. Notice I said my first. I lived a healthy lifestyle with diet and exercise, and there was no family history, no medical indicators whatsoever, none of that. And yet I sat before a doctor in his office and found myself screaming, "What do you mean I have a brain tumor?" During my recovery, I became fascinated and more passionate with topics like, how is women's health different than men's health? How do you find yourself at death's door without serious symptoms? What is stress? And on and on and on. However, I'm going to put a comma there until later because I have a doctor in the house who is also passionate about these issues. Only she knows the answers. To create our common thought space, I chose an article today that fascinated me, and it's in my private library, and it helped me when I look back at my marriage. And I'm thinking there may be somebody out there that may help as well. It's entitled, In Sickness and in Health, by Rebecca Weber, and it was published in Psychology Today in 2008. Before you say I do, scrutinize your lover's drinking habits or eating patterns. Your choice of a romantic partner helps determine how healthy or how sick you'll be. It definitely has its delights, but falling in love shakes up your life quite a bit. Devoting yourself to a partner includes taking on new friends, new relatives, and a new living arrangement. Pairing up also sparks sweet dreams about the goals you'd like to reach, trips you want to take with one another, kids you hope to have. Likely the last thing on your mind is how your beloved will tweak your cholesterol levels. Yet, a large body of research shows that relationships steer our physical well-being as well as our emotional health. A romantic partner often has more influence on our behaviors than anyone else. Exactly how he or she affects our health is sometimes common sense, if not obvious, and sometimes as mysterious as love itself. We tend to hook up with people like us. Everyone says opposites attract, but opposites don't stay together for that long, says Deanna Myler, who co-authored a review of research on the tendency of partners' health habits and statutes to merge, a phenomenon known as health concordance. Pay attention to this. Sustained relationships tend to occur among people who have comparable backgrounds, attitudes, and behaviors, qualities that often find their way into one's physical condition. Lifestyle like-mindedness is part of what drew Kelly McMasters, 32, to her now husband Mark Milroy, 40, back in October of 2000. She's a writer. He's a painter. When they both were self-employed, they both smoked. They said a lot of our early courtships was going out to bars and diners, says Kelly. We drank lots of coffee and ate lots of cheese. We didn't worry about it because we weren't seeing the effects on the outside. Little did we know what it was doing to our blood. When two people marry, their habits become even more alike. A study of newlyweds found that each individual's health behaviors before marriage affected those same behaviors in their partner in years after the wedding. Eating isn't the only ritual that syncs up. Researchers have found that spouses influence each other's exercise habits, doctor's visits, use of alcohol, cigarettes, and marijuana. Soulmates can even develop the same afflictions over time. A condition in one spouse often places the other at increased risk for the same disorder. This may be true of cancer, stroke, arthritis, hypertension, asthma, depression, land on that for a second, and peptic ulcer disease. One study showed that a person's hypertension risk doubles when their spouse is diagnosed as hypertensive. That's probably because commitment typically leads to shared meals, activity patterns, financial resources, and social networks. Couples may also find themselves true partners in health by means of social control, in which one spouse tries to keep the other wholesome, and mood contagion, where one partner's anxiety washes over the other and even takes a toll on his or her body. I want to put a comma there in the article for a moment and share something very personal. I used to smoke. One cigarette in the morning, one cigarette at night. My fiance and then husband knew that. It didn't bother him. I would take a shower and go on. One night, I came to bed and he said, "You've been smoking." And that was the last cigarette I ever smoked. I think that speaks volumes. And maybe that was one of the things that made me add this to my library. That and moving from no drinks to one glass of wine a day by living with a functional alcoholic. I'll go back to the article now. Men whose wives are upset by their work are nearly 3 times more likely to develop heart disease. Individuals don't live in a vacuum, says Gregory Hamish, an epidemiologist at State University of New York at Buffalo. Everyone who's in a relationship should be aware that they're making some physically relevant decisions based on their partner's influence. He says, our doctors should be noting too. They'll ask about your family's history, but not about your spouse. Okay, our what if question for today. What if you consistently treated yourself like someone you loved? What if anything would change in your physical, mental, financial, or spiritual health? Look in that mirror called your spouse and ask that same question. We will ask this question throughout the months that we look at women's health because of its significance and its impact on the quality of life. I'm going to stop now because, like I said, we got a doctor in this house this evening, and I am so excited to present to you Dr. Gloria Ivey Crowe. With further ado, I'm going to have her pick up the mic and talk to you about who she is over and beyond Dr. Gloria Ivey Crowe.
Well, I'm a lot of different things. I spent a large part of my time being a obstetrician and a gynecologist. I'm the owner of Women Physicians of Northern Virginia, where in the last 17 years I've been located in Loudoun County. Mm-hmm. And I've had the distinct pleasure to be able to provide a whole lot of health to a whole lot of women, brought a whole lot of lives into the world. But in the last 2 or 3 years, my focus has been more focused to wellness.
Good.
Wellness for women. And listening to the article you talk about, it's interesting because we do spend a lot of time going when we're taking a history. Mm-hmm. We don't ask anybody about their spouse's history.
Yeah.
But it impacts in so many ways, and that article brought it out very clearly. Very good. Now, I am a single mom. Mm-hmm. I have a sophomore, Bridgewater College. I have a stepdaughter. I do wellness. I do like to do crochet sort of things in my spare time. I spend a lot of times with my friends and family. I've learned in the last few years to spend more time for me.
Praise God, yes.
Which indirectly, of course, we all know all of those things, running around doing a lot of things, increases our stress levels.
Yes.
Increases our high blood pressure.
Yes.
Diabetes has an effect in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's my passion has been trying to empower my patients. It's really about my patients being able to go to their doctor, feel comfortable enough to be able to ask those questions, ask what those numbers that we see on a regular basis every year. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we don't tend to ask the significance of them. If they say they're normal, we kind of take them at face value and move on. But I want women to walk in and ask, mm-hmm. What's my cholesterol? Mm-hmm. What's my diabetes? What's my glucose number? What's my risk? What sort of things should I be looking out for?
You know, when you say that, I'm thinking about, I mentor a lot of young women as well, and they don't know what cholesterol is. They don't know what glucose is. And since I've had more than that one scare in my life, I've become very passionate about those printouts. You know, what's normal, What's the range, and all that. And I know when I decided I wanted you on the show, you happened to be presenting at a conference, and your title was Do You Know Your Numbers?
Exactly.
And I was thrilled about that because this is an intergenerational show. So what's important for a 20-year-old, the numbers that we need to watch out for, is going to be different for a 70-year-old.
Exactly.
And as well, cultural differences when it comes to racial differences.
Correct.
When it comes to numbers. So how do you take a new patient, how do you make her comfortable enough or educated enough to walk in that space? Like, I don't know, do you do the screening first and talk about the numbers?
Well, what normally will happen, and every doctor's office is different. I just found it works a little bit different, and I find I want to create a sort of air for patients to feel comfortable. Of course, my type of exam, not people's first choice. It always gives them a little bit of angst coming in.
Yes.
But what I have them do first coming in is they'll do some historical sort of information, mm-hmm. so that when I see them, mm-hmm. having not met them before, they're new patient, is give me a little bit of history to go on. I'm going to fill in the blanks by asking you a little bit more, but you're going to start out by giving some history.
Okay.
Then my nurse is going to escort you in the back and take some numbers. In the world of insurance, we have to prove that we've seen a patient. So each patient will get a blood pressure and a weight. Now, my nurse may share something about those numbers. I will share more detail about those numbers. Now, a lot of times we go in with the assumption that people know what a blood pressure represents, what a weight represents. But a blood pressure is going to represent, and that's important when we're looking at heart disease.
Yes.
It's going to represent what sort of pressure is being exerted in the arteries when blood is flowing through during a contraction, and what's happening when blood is flowing through at rest. And you can figure out that the most significant number that we're looking at is going to be what's happening when when there's no contraction, the heart is resting. When we're resting, we expect our activity levels to be low. So what do we expect? We want our blood pressures to be low. If a person has an elevated blood pressure at rest, that's a red flag. That means the heart is going to work harder. It's working harder at rest than you know when it's actually contracting and trying to push blood flow through the body. It's got to work even harder.
Right.
The reasons are varied. For most people who have high blood pressure, it's called essential hypertension, which means 90% of the time, we don't know. People have risk factors and things that we can identify in their history, but 9 times out of 10, we don't know what caused their blood pressure. We can look at things that we think are risk. We can look at things we think can be preventive.
Like diet?
Yeah, diet, exercise.
Okay.
You know, you talked about in that article, people with caffeine, coffee, all of those are different things that we found affect your blood pressure. Your family history, the thing that you can do nothing about is your genes. Your genetics, you're born with that.
Yes.
You don't get the opportunity to say, you know what, I don't really like that. Let me trade those in. So understanding and knowing that sort of thing ahead of time is an indicator to help educate your patient that, look, your mom had high blood pressure. Your mom had high cholesterol. These are the things that, although I might see a patient and she's young, these are the things she has to be thinking about. More significant as she get older, but still significant nonetheless. So I start with that. The other thing I try to do a little different when I come in the room is I try not to have my patients get undressed.
Praise God.
I have my patients sit in the room
Yes.
and come in and talk.
Okay.
It's a chance for them to feel more relaxed. They're already stressed about the exam anyway. So let's sit, let's talk. And then I just start out with, how you doing? How's things been going? So I start talking about things that don't have anything to do with medicine. It's a chance for them to open up, tell me a little bit about them. I share a little bit about myself. And then indirectly, I'm getting some historical information on them. I'm also able to ask them what brings them to the doctor today. So it's a non-threatening situation. I'm sitting across from them. I'm not standing higher than them. They're not on the table. I want them in the chair.
Let me ask you something. And I just realized this. When I was in Florida, I had a wonderful OBGYN. And I have naturally low blood pressure, like 110/60, that kind of thing. And she knew that. But I came in and it was very elevated. And, of course, I was in pain. But she knew something else was going on with my job life. And what she did, instead of, she'd taken it once, we had a conversation, she took it again.
That's right.
And it was lower.
Right. Sometimes we'll take it at the end of the exam.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what happens is people will experience what's called white coat hypertension. You're walking in, you see a doctor, you know you're going to see a physician. You have your fears already, direct, indirect fears of just coming in for the exam itself. You're fearful that we're going to tell you something's wrong. So all of those indirectly impact your blood pressure. What happened to you at the office? You were running late. You got caught in traffic. All of those are different things that are going to affect that blood pressure. So we know that sometimes by the end of the exam, people's blood pressure is going to be much less.
Okay.
So it's not unusual for me to have my nurse repeat the blood pressure at the end of the exam.
Okay, excellent. And as you're having the conversation, say I present and I'm having, well, I've never had a child, so I can't go through that conversation with you. But I have had unusual experiences with my breast.
Okay.
And I went through that, the biopsy, the whole thing, and they got ready to operate, and there was nothing there. like you said, there are a lot of things that are unexplainable.
That's right.
And there is a mystery about health. I think historically we've learned to put words to patterns and observations and research. But the thing I think people should hear, and you should say again, we can't do anything about our genes.
We cannot. We bring those to the table, and they follow us everywhere we go. And they impact us in so many areas that we don't always know about. And there's still so many studies, so many trials trying to look at the significance of that. We see it a lot in women when we look at the gene for breast cancer. We've spent a lot of time isolating those particular factors, and indirectly it's impacted the risk and the incidence of breast cancer in women. We're looking at the significance of that in different syndromes. We're looking at the significance of your genetics for cholesterol. So in so many ways, your genes play a part that you, like we said from the beginning, things that you can't change. But awareness is what's important.
Yeah, and I'm thinking one of the things that I like to do with the young women, I guess we must have skipped a couple of generations, but they don't have intelligent conversations about their health. I'm not talking about sex. They have all kinds of conversations.
Right, but they feel comfortable with those sort of things.
Yeah, they do.
And I think some of it can be exposure.
Okay.
And the millennial and the younger generation is about getting an information in a nutshell very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Yes.
And sometimes I spend an inordinate amount of time making sure my patients understand. Because nothing is more frustrating than to sit down with a patient, especially if it's something serious that you're going over, and they don't bring anybody with them to hear the conversation because they don't always hear it. They may not take notes, and they leave and they call you back and say, you know what, I really didn't remember anything that you said. So significant situations where we're giving over information about cancer, life-threatening sort of things, important to take some notes and for someone to be with them to listen and take that information down. But our kids are about not necessarily in, out, and they're on a whole nother mission. Their focus is different. Our older generation, we were more concerned about health. Now, we didn't have the resources available that they have now. And sometimes maybe it's just that their resources now are so readily available that they're not fearing anything. They don't have the same fears that we had.
And you know something else, actually two things. One, like you said, my mother didn't talk to me about a lot of things. So when I presented, somebody said, what was your history?
Right.
And very often we don't have a generational history.
We don't.
We haven't talked about it. And I used to think it was just black women. That's not true.
No. It's across all cultures.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Those things weren't talked about. A lot of that wasn't understood. You didn't know what it was you needed to talk about.
Exactly. And the whole menopause thing, administration,
the
M's, you know.
Exactly.
And I don't mind saying this to anyone. I remember my mother giving me a book.
And that's what we had. It was a kit.
Yes.
It came in a kit. And I used to joke and tell my friends that my sister had she was first. So she had this kit. And I can remember it sat in the top shelf. It was like, you don't touch that. I would sneak and read the book and said, oh my God, what is this? I don't want to experience this. I want to die before this happens. I don't even want to experience that. But lack of knowledge.
I know.
And I joke even with my mom now. I would say to my mom now, you just didn't talk about all those sort of things. And she said, yeah, but you learned it. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of things we learned by trial and error, but a lot of things we learned by not learning it. You just didn't get the answers until later.
And I think, because I'm really into issues of guilt and shame, and I think when we were not taught properly, many of us were ashamed of menstruation.
Oh my gosh, just remember the Kotex, the belts. Remember going to the store and
gym
scared.
classes.
Oh my gosh, you had these huge pads that you just knew everybody standing behind you knew you had a pad in those panties. That pad was huge. The boys could see it. You get up from the chair, you're scared. Is there a spot on my clothes?
Yes.
Is there something in the chair?
Yes.
And don't talk about going to the store and buying some.
I know.
You're looking like everywhere. Is there somebody watching me buy my pads? Now, nothing. Tell your husband, your significant other, anybody, just go get me some tampons.
Yeah.
Go get me a pads. times have changed.
Well, and communication.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to get to when you were talking about how the young people, millennials and younger, and I'm thinking as well, very often Gen X and maybe boomers are looking to the commercials on television
to get their information and
Yes.
their education.
Yes.
That is so true. But I have to say, in response to a lot of our pharmaceutical companies, they are getting some good messages out there.
Okay.
And they've been, in the last 5 to 10 years, smart enough to realize the market is television and radio. Market your product there, and that person will walk into our office and say, so I want to let you know, I saw a commercial today. Tell me about this.
Exactly.
What about this? I want this.
Exactly.
I want that.
And I don't know whether it was a health show or whatever. I know it was about women, and the issue was they diagnose. And I think the skill, the grace, and the wonderfulness about physicians now is they can take what I come in with. I saw this on television. Can I take this in conjunction with my antidepressant or what, and then you have the conversation.
Exactly.
But you're right. You have to go to where the eyes are. And right now the computer's in our pocket or it's on television.
Oh my gosh, WebMD. How many people are reading and living their lives and their health through WebMD?
That's true.
And it's a struggle sometimes when you're coming in and trying to educate your patient. You're spending half your time debunking what they've read online to realize that that's someone who put some information out there. They put it out there. They put it out there in Wikipedia.
Yeah.
They put some information out there. Not always the place to get a lot of information, but to give you some summary information.
Absolutely.
Enough information, hopefully, to generate a conversation.
And I think for me, one of the things, I was sitting with a young lady and we went on WebMD. I said, well, talk to me about your symptoms, because she had a fright of going to the doctor. She just knew she had an STD, which meant she had to deal with it. She was sexually active and, the guilt, the shame.
Oh, that's a whole
And then
situation.
The whole bullying that's saying you can't be in the in group unless you have done A, B, C, D, and E. So what I'm learning is the issue more than physical is emotional and mental. If I can talk to these young ladies and say you're worthy.
Absolutely.
You have a right to have an opinion. You have a right to say no. But I'm not included. Okay, well, let's talk about what inclusion is meaning to you, this whole thing. So, wow, we're just all over the place. But this is, no, I mean, seriously, this is a lot of what's going on. And like you were talking about the younger generation. Okay, people like me, old folk, all right? So maybe we don't have to have a pap smear every day or every week or every year. But there are other things that we have to look out. So if I'm looking at a boomer or a woman of veteran age, what should we be concerned about?
So as we get older, our focus as physicians changes on what sort of things that patients are more at risk for, what sort of things. And, of course, the number one thing we're trying to make sure that we're focusing on in any age group, but not so much for the younger folks, is heart disease and diabetes.
Okay.
Those are our number one killers. So if hypertension and heart disease are the silent killers, then we've got to focus on that. So when you're going to a well woman exam, whether you're doing it in internal medicine or you're doing it with a gynecologist, we're focusing on trying to identify, number one, anything going on that we need to be concerned about for breast cancer. So we're doing a breast exam. Literature says if you look at the amount of breast cancer that's being picked up, breast exams are irrelevant. I say a challenge to that woman who walks in my office, has a lump. We find out it's breast cancer. She doesn't want to hear that breast self-exam wasn't important. It's important. So breast self-exam. We're looking to see patterns of bleeding. Bleeding is different. So for the woman who said, all my life I've had heavy periods, no real problem, when you're older, it's significant. We're looking at things that may be precancerous. That may be an indicator of something you never paid attention to. Important now. Cholesterol, real important, because we know it's been years, but now those effects on the arteries are going to be more significant. That on top of other risk factors, whether that's diabetes, whether that's high blood pressure, are going to increase your risk of heart disease. So we're going to concentrate on those sort of numbers. We're going to do some blood work, some screening sort of blood work. Now, your insurance company sometimes dictates the frequency in which we may do that.
Right.
But a lot of things, I tell women, the new recommendations are you don't have to have a pap smear every year. But I explain to women what that means is, first of all, you got to meet the first part of the criteria, is that you had a normal pap smear for about 3 years in a row. Then from that, depending on your age, depending upon whether you had surgical removal of your uterus and your cervix, you may not need a pap smear anymore. Medicare says after 70, no more pap smears. But I explain to women, even though you may not have a pap smear, you still have a vagina, you still have ovaries, you still have a vulva, all areas for cancer to occur. So even though we may not do a pap smear and swab you and take cells, we still need to do that by manual exam.
Okay.
You still need to come in for an examination. You still need to be in context to make sure you get a mammogram. If you're over 50, we're looking at your bones. Your bones have a significance. So for us, those are the prime key factors of things that we're looking at. Your internal medicine is going to look more at everything. They're going to look at your thyroid.
Right.
They're going to look at your liver. Right. They're going to look at your cholesterol, calcium. They're going to look at all overall general health. Even though we're more focused, we still are considered a primary care entity.
Right.
So we still do a little bit of primary care. So I spend time still looking, identifying. I'm still checking thyroid. I'm still checking some of the things, because for some of my patients, there is no primary care.
Exactly. And I'm going to personalize this again. Frankly speaking, with Tyra G, low blood pressure, healthy lifestyle, writing my book, no family history, no heart history. Laid down after I pushed the button, sent my book to the publisher, was dizzy, felt nauseous, crawled to the bathroom, passed out. Woke up, shower curtain on top of me, could not move, could not breathe, could move my baby finger, realized where I was, and gave up because I lived alone, no way to call for help, nothing. I had my systems had shut down. I'd voided all over I was a mess. And when I woke up, again, I was on the living room floor with a cell phone and someone saying, "Ma'am, stay with us. Ma'am, stay with us. Do you have aspirin? How old are you? Do you have pets? Did you do?" And of course, I couldn't answer, and I didn't understand how I got there. Long story short, 4 people came, start working on me, talking to the doctor, took me down the sheet, I'd had a heart attack. And
subtle signs.
I mean, and the thing,
very subtle.
Exactly. But here was what I learned, and this is what I want women to hear before I go to break. Listen up, ladies. What I learned was I walked every day an hour. I did Pilates. I did blah, 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 Mediterranean diet. What I didn't know, I was under stress, extreme stress, solidly for 1 year. And I had processed it. I had prayed. I had done. But what was happening, my artery was blocked. And my cardiac surgeon said, our bodies are phenomenal. Yours had found another way to get to the heart, and it could no longer do that. And what he said to me, he had the nurse after the cath lab turn me, he says, "That was your heart. That was your artery." He said, "There it is now, healthily pumping life." Right. And he said, "But what we don't understand is you don't have any damage. We've been with you 90 minutes. We don't know how long you were on." So what I want to say to women, don't assume you're healthy because you don't have symptoms. Go ahead and get the checkups. And I'd been getting checkups, and nobody saw it. So this is one of those things that maybe you were talking about. You can't explain it. If you can't see it, you can't explain. And I've been getting all the exams what the list said I should have been getting, you know.
And the thing is, some exams are not going to be done unless you do have some symptoms.
Right.
And
right.
if you've got a doc running in, running out, rushing, and how you doing today? I'm doing fine. Nothing's been going on. No. And especially if you didn't think it was significant to be mentioned from the very beginning.
Exactly.
Then there's not going to be any cardiac studies done.
No.
There may not be an EKG
and with low blood
done.
pressure and all
Your
that.
blood pressure is low. She's healthy. She's the least of my worries. She's not having any complaints. You move on to the next patient.
Well, we're going to move on to a break, but I don't want to lose this thought. And here we are talking about hearts. Now, just to help anybody that tuned in late, we're talking about the issues that face us as women. We have acknowledged that sometimes we don't love ourselves enough to be the chief medical officer of ourselves. We do that for our families. We also know that there are generational differences in terms of health screenings that are necessary. We know that younger women that are premenstrual have different issues than those of us who become women. We also know there's some cultural traditions that sometimes mess us up and cause us shame. We know that women over 50 needs particular screenings. And Dr. Gloria, you want to review those again?
Yeah, we talked about over 50. As usual, on an annual basis, we're going to always do a mammogram. Bone density becomes important at 50, unless the woman had some other risk factors for osteoporosis. We're also going to be looking at shingles. So vaccinations, those are important. Pneumococcal vaccine, very important for us as we get 50 and above. A lot of things that we don't particularly administer, but those are things that your primary care will go over with you.
Right.
So those are the important things. Our focus is more about, even though when women are coming to what we call the climacteric or the end part of their reproductive years, we still are interested in what's happening with their menstrual cycles, because some abnormalities there may be the first indicators for uterine cancer. We're also concerned about ovarian cancer. So we're moving into the realm where risk is important, or risk factors, or identifying symptoms that may be suggestive. We all hear about ovarian cancer is always found when it's too late. And that's because a large mass can occupy the pelvis. So when women are having symptoms of bloated, things with their appetite changes, weight changes, significant things to bring to your physician, whether it's your GYN or your internal medicine, may be the first signs of ovarian cancer. I can't tell you how many women who I talk to who have uterine cancer, all of those women can tell you, I had some abnormal bleeding. When you've finished your cycles have been gone for a year, that's considered menopause. If some bleeding happens after that, always get it evaluated. Now, what seems to throw women off a lot of times is because it didn't have any pain and it wasn't a lot of bleeding, they didn't think it was significant. Uterine cancer usually always shows itself and tells you something, a symptom, before it becomes aggressive and has spread. Uterine cancer grows very slowly.
And what kind of symptoms might there be?
The number one symptom is going to be bleeding.
Okay.
Whether that's some spotting or whether there's frank bleeding, like you need to put a pad on, it needs to be investigated.
Okay.
Whether it's with a sonogram and or a biopsy as well.
Now, we've used the word insurance only a couple of times, and that's a two-sided coin, the way our health system is currently set up. And with legislation now moving some of the free services out of the availability pipeline to women, what kind of options do you see that we can look to? I mean, all of us need help.
Well, I think what's going to end up happening, you see all these patient firsts, all these urgent care.
Yes.
And people are going to start using that as their doctor's office and their emergency rooms. And their emergency rooms are going to get inundated. Even though people don't have insurance, the patient first and the urgent cares in some cases is an option if they do have some financial, some sort of finances. Medicaid is going to be an option for some women. And for some women, there will be no options. I've always thought about some sort of, and we do have mobile health vans, but whether or not that's going to be something that we can lean towards. We have a lot of that already in Loudoun County. Mobile health vans moving around in areas. Now, how much of that is given a lot of women's health? We have that available to us. But we may need to look at that a little bit more in detail. And a lot of women are going to get lost in the system because they don't have the resources to go out there and do anything. They don't have the support system that they need. to go out, and they don't have insurance, unfortunately.
Is there hope? I'm just sitting here thinking, lost. What do we do?
We just got to make use our voices.
Yes.
I think we have to come together more. I think we'll have to lobby our senators, our council people to demand a sort of certain amount of health care. And that's where now in Loudoun we have Loudoun free clinics. We have free clinics. We have HealthWorks. So we've got some options out there. HealthWorks is based on no income to our income.
Okay.
So that's an option. Well, now, there are not a lot of HealthWorks offices, but there are. We have them out in Leesburg.
Okay.
They have them in Herndon. So they
you
have
can
them in
get
different
to 'em.
locations. You just got to get to them. But once again, it's knowing that is a resource that exists. So it's more about we've got to educate people about what we have. We have Loudoun Free Clinic, provides a host of services.
So if
free.
it exists in Loudoun, and understanding this could be worldwide, and we know many countries have free health care.
Right.
And I had an experience. I experienced that once when I was in corporate America. I had an incident in Canada where I received medical care through their system.
Okay.
So for developed countries, we know that there are many countries where you have an option. Right now in the United States, we have a challenge. And it's about us. It's about women. And using your voice, like you said, is one of the most important things that we can.
Exactly.
What I need you to do is fulfill your assignment. I gave you an assignment, as I do every single guest. And what we're doing, for those of you who don't know, I ask every single guest to write and read to you a letter they would have written to their younger self based on the life that they have lived. And we believe that a story is to be told in each person. So, Dr. Gloria, it's your turn.
Dear Gloria, high school was fast and great. You did well academically, but needed more training for the studies required for college. You struggled to find yourself and question your career choice. Your academic environment is not supportive, but you learned to be more assertive in the end. You were never a quitter, so you hung in there, even when the going got tough. Undergraduate work was challenging, but you graduate. Now you seem to have Now you need some more exposure before you will commit to being ready for medical school. You learn other skills and do very well, but that yearning is always in the background, not feeling quite complete yet. You establish lifelong commitments and friendships. Public service is important, and you show that with your involvement in the #1 public service organization, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. You learn that the Black voice needs to be heard on your campus, and you realize that racism is alive and present on American University's main campus. You will start to become the vocal person that marks you as a person the remainder of your life. You learn your deficiencies and apply lessons learned when you embark upon training for medical laboratory technician and Howard University's physician assistant programs. The training awakens your passion for emergency care and women's health. You will always need to support yourself financially, so opportunities arise that push medicine to the back burner. You learn skills that will prove very helpful later when you are in private practice, always wondering what you are doing here and not in medical school, learning your craft. Can't figure out how to get that done with no money and no way in. Well, God always works it out. You are riffed, and the severance pay will take care of all the bills. What's your excuse now? Well, still, you don't take the plunge. You take a job at Planned Parenthood and convince yourself that this will take care of your passion to help and empower women. Well, it doesn't quite do it for you. Info on Jim's program at Georgetown becomes available, and you decide to apply. Best decision you made that propels you towards your dream. You will complete medical school and will feel pulled towards both emergency medicine and OBGYN. Marriage and childbearing occurs much later for you, but you can personally relate to your patients as an AMA, an advanced maternal age patient. You will experience a loss, but it serves as a testimony for other women who come after you. Leadership skills will be called into play as your supervisor gets breast cancer and multiple sclerosis. A private practice in Virginia changes your comfortable environment. See one, teach one. Teaching and empowerment are the impetus behind teaching at every visit, writing articles for Virginia Women magazine. Lessons are forever learned, and you go from a mega practice to a solo practice in 14 years. The trials and tribulations you experience during private practice show your resilience and character. You will always keep in the forefront, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Your good works don't always carry you far. You will sometimes be judged by your cover. Your faith is tested in the later decades. God always comes through with flying colors. I am proud how you have handled the adversities. You are always looking for another way. One door shuts, you are looking for the next opening. You've given versatility a new name. You always have and will continue to be empathetic to others. Age brings maturity and a more concrete sense of what you want. Don't forget to take time for yourself. This takes a while, but by the 5th decade, you got it. Your journey is to listen. Give people permission to speak those inner thoughts. Empower them to ask and expect good help. You've done it. Retirement is a bad word. You are here to teach and empower others.
Dr. Gloria, you have to do two other things for me. You have to promise to come back.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm thinking as we talk, maybe we need to have, regardless of the topic, at least once a quarter, an update.
Okay.
And we'll have a focused topic on women.
Absolutely.
For the time. And, whatever it's going to be right.
I'll be happy to come back.
I appreciate it so much. I want to let everybody remember you're listening to Frankly Speaking with Tyra G at Radio Fairfax, Virginia, on your TV, computer, or mobile device. You can hear us every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's okay if you have a competing priority. You can check us out on our podcast at www.franklyspeakingwithtyrag.com. And guess what? I need to hear from you. I really cannot do this show without you. Please email me at tyra@tyragarlington.com. Now, for the wrapping on your spiritual doggy bag, I want to remind you, you're worthy. You are never alone. You have every single thing inside of you that you need to be the person you were created to be. Nothing, the good, the bad, the scary, nothing that has happened to you in your life will be wasted. I'm here and I'm listening. And we're going to let Mr. Tony Walker take us out on the piano version of our theme song. Let me hear from you. This is Tyra G.